and welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. My name is Omar Pinto, the host of the Shair podcast and a founding member of the SRC, the Shair Recovery Community. In the SRC, we have a number of live online recovery meetings every week on a number of different topics. This podcast is only one example of the content provided to our members. In this meeting, a chapter of the Tao Te Ching is discussed every week as to how it relates to recovery. I hope you enjoy this week's podcast episode.
Hey guys, Buddy C. This is the January 2nd, 2020 Tao Te Ching meeting for the Shair Recovery Community. Happy New Year, everyone. Hope everyone, I had a sponsee, Zachy, that I talk with about the Tao all the time. He sent me his Happy New Year to me was, Happy New Year, may it be filled with emptiness. And I said, I wish I would have thought of that. So I started using that. After he said that, I started using it. So guys, may your new year be filled with emptiness. Is that not what the Tao is all about anyway? Is teaching us how to get out of the way, how to step aside. God seems to work in my life in spite of me, not because of me. You know? Just getting out of the way so I can see more of that. It's happening all the time, whether I realize it or not. You know? Let me go ahead and welcome everyone. Today we have a good crowd. Cindy and Jan. Jan's new. Glad to see you, Jan. Good to have you, Sandra. Good to have Tina and Kirsty and Marlowe and Rob, Craig and Paul. Any comments on this night's chapter before we begin?
I think it really relates very well to addiction in that, reading Wayne Dyer, that one is never enough. We need to keep going and going and going because we need to keep going to get satiated. And this chapter is telling us to stop, stop when we're at that point of satiation and don't go any further, which relates to drinking for me.
I agree, Marla. Oh, I wonder. We got a card. We got a Christmas card from Drew C. I'd like to give a shout out to Drew. He's a listener that I met last summer as he was driving through, and he wanted to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and that he appreciated the podcast. So thank you, Drew. We appreciate you, and it's good to hear from you. But that was very nice. Craig, you have a comment.
Yeah, two things. Just we doing a shout out to Drew. I've got a shout out to Matt, who's just joined the SRC as well. He joined the SRC through listening to the podcast, I believe, or as one of the catalysts. So welcome, Matt. I wish I'd have been taught this chapter at school. If I'd been taught this at school, then my life wouldn't have been half the shit show that it was.
Anything else before we read? Paul's going to read for us today.
Here we go. 9th chapter, first translation. Better to stop short than fill to the brim. Over-sharpen the blade, and the edge will soon blunt. Amass a store of gold and jade, and no one can protect it. Claim wealth and titles, and disaster will follow. Retire when the work is done. This is the way of heaven. Second translation. Fill your bowl to the brim, and it will spill. Keep sharpening your knife, and it will blunt. Chase after money and security, and your heart will never unclench. Care about people's approval, and you will be their prisoner. Do your work, then step back, the only path to serenity. Third translation. It is easier to carry an empty cup than one that is filled to the brim. The sharper the knife, the easier it is to dull. The more wealth you possess, the harder it is to protect. Pride brings its own trouble. When you have accomplished your goal, simply walk away. This is the pathway to heaven. And the fourth and final translation, if you drink too much, you get drunk. The engine won't start if you're always tinkering with it. If you hoard wealth, you will fall into its clutches. If you crave success, you succumb to failure. Do what you have to do, then walk away. Anything else will drive you nuts.
Anything else will drive you nuts.
Yeah, that last one, that really speaks to the addiction there, doesn't it? That last translation.
It does, Paul. It does. I think Marlowe hit the nail on the head, though. Craig?
So I'm reading about the monk who sold his Ferrari, and he's talking about how we should stop and give ourselves a bit of time, give ourselves a bit of rest, not constantly overdo it. And what he done was he compared our minds and our lives to his Ferrari or a multi-million-pound sports car. And he was saying that if you have something of that value, if you have something that's worth so much to you, you wouldn't constantly be running it at full throttle, at full speed, and just running the arse out of this thing. You would always stop, you'd put petrol in it, you'd check the oil levels, you'd check the coolant levels, you'd make sure that everything is just ticking over perfectly so that you don't have to take the car into the garage constantly and constantly be paying for all these repairs. And he was saying if you treat your mind and your body like that as well, if you always stop, pause, and just give yourself that time to yourself, that prayer meditation time, that spiritual time that you can build yourself up and just refresh yourself rather than constantly burning yourself out. I got that idea as well from the over-sharpening your blade. We can do this sort of thing in recovery. We can do too much recovery. We can do too much work on ourselves and we can end up burning ourselves out. I was in a place like that nearly about 2 years ago. I was reading all these books, I was listening to all these podcasts, I was empathizing with what everybody was saying, and I just got stuck into this rut of just being too empathetic. It started depressing me, and I couldn't really find a way out. And it wasn't until I went to my doctor, he just says, look, stop. You're doing far too much. You have to just stop and just take it easy. Let's just start from the bottom. Let's just keep it simple. Let's get to your meetings. Let's start connecting with people and just forget about everything else that's going on. So yeah, I like that. I like that verse. Ninth chapter is a great chapter, more particular for people in addiction or people who struggle with moderation.
Thanks, Craig. Marla, you have something?
Yeah, we can't do moderation. It's not this, and this, I think this chapter though is not specifically talking to people in recovery, but it is saying be moderate in your worldly goods, or acquiring worldly goods, and not also be too big and proud with all your worldly goods, because eventually they're going to be gone. And it's same with our recovery, though. If we, I love what you said, Craig. If we do too much, we get into a rut, and there's nothing else going on in our lives that should be going on. We need to live a normal life, at least try to. But, when somebody starts spewing dogma and, I do this and this and this every day, I think to myself, that's they're not really living. They're not, assimilating into real life at this point. They're just all about recovery. And I fear for them. And I get turned off.
Marla, for me, if I take the same approach to recovery that I took with learning a new job or a new hobby or a new skill, I could have a tendency to burn out. For me, that would be the kind of thing that Craig was talking about, with doing too much coming into recovery. I'm doing too much. Doing too much to me is the work harder, do better mentality that we try to, a lot of times that we can apply to recovery, not understanding I had to take a whole different approach to recovery than the work harder, do better mentality. Because that work harder, do better just caused more angst for me and more issues. So when I realized it wasn't about working harder and doing better, it was about surrender. For me, the most important thing I do every day is not a reading or this or that, is spending some time in meditation. I skipped my meditation time yesterday. I don't know when in the past I've had a day that I did zero meditation, but that day was yesterday. I did none. Got up early, went and did a hike, a sunrise hike with some recovery friends, got home, got busy, and just did not do it. I could have. I watched a couple of movies. I mean, I could have done it. I just didn't do it. I didn't think about it, really. And I got up this morning, and my mind was all over the place when I sat down to meditate. I said, what is wrong with me? And I said, wait a minute. I said, I didn't meditate at all yesterday. I said, it really is accumulative. It really is. So, you learn those things at work. It wasn't about spending hours of reading. It was about the things that spoke to me, the things that worked for me. So that's super important that we learn the things that speak to us. Let's just do them. And they're usually the simplest, easiest things. Rob, you got a comment, sir?
Yeah, real quick. Early in recovery, for me at least, I was doing anything and everything, and anything I came across, which was about anything I get my hands on, to just not drink. And I see a lot of new folks joining another group I'm a member of, and my recommendation to them is do everything and anything and grab claw, anything not to drink. And here's 50 things. Try them all, keep an open mind. But somewhere in the process, once I got the stuff out of my system and I got over the pink cloud, I had to come to the same thing, buddy. If I don't start my day out centered, know where I stand in this whole thing, and just calm down, pretty much by 3 o'clock, I'm coming off the rails wanting to drink. I mean, it's really that critical for me. So I can't agree anymore. And this came later in my recovery. This came later after I figured out I don't need 55 things to quit drinking. That's what I got.
Thanks, Rob. Craig?
I think we use the right tools to excess as well, or to the right amount. With me saying that I was doing too much recovery, I was focused on the wrong part of recovery. I was focusing on the not drinking part. And by thinking about not drinking, all I was doing was thinking about drinking. It was getting into that headset. I was getting into that mindset of just don't think about drinking, don't think about drinking. It's like saying don't think about the yellow elephant. Everybody all of a sudden starts thinking about the yellow elephant, and they can't get rid of this thing out of the head. If I'd have jumped forward to some of the podcasts I was listening to, if I'd have jumped about 45 minutes in, I would have started focusing on the right side of recovery. I would have focused on the way people were getting better, rather than just empathizing on everybody's poor me. This is where I was, and I'm stuck here. I think looking at the right side of what you're doing, so using the right tools for the right job was important. And there was something else. There was something else that Rob touched on. Can't remember what it is. I'll come back to it if I remember.
Thanks, Craig. Cindy?
Yeah, for me, I thought about sort of busyness. I always say that recovery, like I consider myself an onion. I think we all are. Like when you're in recovery, you peel back layers. And I think for me, when I got to a layer I didn't want to deal with, I filled my calendar and I filled my to-do list. And I just kept filling and filling and filling and filling to the point where it was like I was trying to make up for lost time and leave myself no time for reflection, because as long as I couldn't think about it, then I wasn't going to have to deal with it. But that really didn't work out so well. So to me, it's also that not just a recovery thing, but what am I doing with my time? Like, am I filling my calendar to the point where there literally is no time left for there to be any reflection? And it's also setting myself up for failure, because if one thing fucks up, and it always will, everything crashes, and then I've created all this stress for myself. And I feel like that's a cycle that I sort of was doing for the last couple of years. Whereas this year I'm feeling more mindful about, as things pop up, is this the right thing? I don't have to say yes immediately to someone who makes a request of me. I can think about it. I can pray about it. I don't have to people please, So I think I was trying to fill my cup up with people approving of what I was doing, people approving of what I was saying. Do I look like I'm that kind of person you should trust and like and whatever? Whereas I really just need to focus on remaining open and not having an expectation.
Thanks, Cindy. That's good. That's good. Paul?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate kind of what everybody else has been saying. I really like this discussion here as it relates to recovery. I have to keep it simple. I have to just, I do my gratitude in the morning, and then I pretty much go on with my day, and I don't really give it much thought to my recovery other than when I'm in these meetings. I think a lot of people in my life, a lot of my friends probably don't even know that I'm in recovery, because I was so good at hiding my drinking. And I've made a lot of new friends since I've gotten into recovery, that are not in recovery themselves. So I have a lot of normie friends who probably have no clue as to my past or what. But yeah, it's just a quick, simple little practice in the morning, and I can get on with the day. And I found that's what works for me. It might not work for you. That's fine. But if somebody asks about it, I'll share about it. But I don't. To be honest with you, most of my friends don't even, like I said, a lot of them don't have a clue. And if they do, we don't really talk about it too much because it doesn't affect them. And so, but yeah, I really like I like that analogy with the sharpening of the blade. That really spoke to me.
Yeah, that's really from what some of the commentaries say. That's talking about the sharper the blade, the easier it is to break. And the same with a cup. Trying to walk with a full cup is so difficult. When if you just are moderate and just have what the cup is designed to carry in it or less, it's so much easier to walk with. Same kind of thinking. The same with money. It's chasing after money. We have the same issues that if that becomes too valuable to us or we have too much, it's difficult to manage. Same kind of thing. Kirsty?
I think I just reiterate what a lot of people have been saying. I think it's very easy, even in recovery, to become a person who seeks approval, and in doing that at the same time grasps at all of these things to the point that you haven't just got one cup that's filling over, you've got about 10. And you're sharpening that knife to the point where it is gonna break. And I've been there. It's very, very, it's very easy to find yourself in that position and feel like you are doing the right thing. And it's only, many years later on reflection that you just look back and think, goodness me, you were so poorly. And, life, I for me, it is, I find it very difficult balance, because I'm as guilty as anyone for doing too much, but also doing too little. I can quite happily drive myself crazy and up the wall with tasks that really aren't that important. But also I can sleep for England. I could do it as a sport, and I could spend my days, watching endless, television. And so it is about moderation, but it's just not something I have yet developed a skill at, and must try to get some kind of, I don't know, I've said this so many times, I need a bit of balance, but I'm getting there, and it's the reflection, it's the looking back, it's the seeing actually how much improvement there's been. I don't work, and I do things that I want to. I don't have a list. I go with the flow, and yeah, life is so much better being slower and not putting such a high value on the stuff that I used to think was so important, like money, career, busyness. Being busy is one thing. And facing it, just facing it, facing life. And that's me.
Greg?
I remembered what it was. And it kind of comes back to what Kirsty was just saying there as well. It was part of my readings this morning. I do the U version in the Bible, and part of it was Matthew 11, and I replaced the word religion. What I've done is I looked at this reading as if it was my sobriety talking to me. I didn't personify my addiction. It says, "Are you tired, worn out, burned out on drinking? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I will show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live right and freely." And I kind of thought that touched really on my addiction and where I'm now in my recovery, my sobriety. That's where I'm at the moment. I'm living an incredibly light life, in terms of not taking on too much, not doing more than I need to be doing. And it really is truly such a great place to be. I wouldn't have been able to do it without these tools and using the right tool to the right amount.
Yeah, well, that's good. Thank you, Craig. How about this idea of care about people's approval and you will be their prisoner? A couple of y'all have touched on that. I wrote, to let go of the approval of others, I am the prisoner of those whom I seek to approve. Yes, Kirsten?
That defined my life for probably over 20 years, and including several years in recovery. And I don't know whether that was a conditioned idea that I had, but what I did was what I thought I wanted other people for me, for me to do, because I was so used to being told that I was wrong, that I was defective, and being shamed. Recently, in the last probably 12 months, being able to say, well, this is what I am, this is who I am, these are my values, and this is what I want to do. The people that are true friends are still there, the same true friends that have been with me, for all those years. And if people don't like it, well, they've kind of dropped off, and I've not really felt a great loss. And it's that, for me, is the most liberating thing about the peeling, losing that layer, using that layer of needing the approval of people, and being like codependent on my father and my husband, and because I was trapped. I was trapped in a world where I lived for other people, and now I am living for myself, and I have choices, and that is mind-blowing, really. Mind-blowing.
Hey, Kirsty, don't you think that, I think what this chapter did was it showed us really the outward manifestation of what happens when we're a people pleaser.
Mm.
The way it's shown is our lack of moderation a lot of times. That's one thing that can cause all this lack of moderation, this over-sharpening. All of this is because we're so concerned with pleasing the people around us. So we're a prisoner to all of these people because we have such care and concern about their approval. And the result of that, is these things, that we see here, the overfilling and the over-sharpening and the excess money, all those things, because we're trying to find someone's approval externally that we can't find. Yeah.
And it's to fill that, that ever present void within, a great number of addicts that says that we're not good enough. When in reality we all are, and we all are as our authentic selves.
Yeah.
And we don't need to do a career for someone else, earn thousands of whatever for the approval of, I don't know, society or whatever it is that we think we're doing. Because I know that even if I had nothing, the people in my life that mattered would still be there. And that kind of is what, hopefully, the way I try and live my life nowadays.
Yeah. Thank you, Kirsty. Rob?
Yeah, this one I'm working through now, because everything that I learned from an early age was if I get all A's, I get a reward, and my parents are happy. If in the social crowd, I'm not sitting by myself getting made fun of. If I lose the weight, I'm accepted because I'm cool. If I'm not cool, I can drink, and then I figure out I'm cool, and I'm now in the crowd, and people like me. It's like this. It's like this false message that the world, my parents, and everything around me is saying, work hard, you'll make more money. But I'm having to come to terms that my worth's not based on other people's approval, which I think is a paraphrase of what's being said here. And that mentality of my whole existence is to be a show and fake it till I make it for other people's approval is exactly slavery. You're never going to win. It just shackles. And it wasn't until I started recovery, I think I might have heard these concepts, maybe in some personal counseling that I've had and things, but it didn't really become a reality. Be true to thine own self. These concepts of, wait a minute, I've got to figure out who I am and where I fit in this whole thing and what kind of control I have or don't have, and start there, and then let the chips fall wherever they are, right? I can't control what other people think of me. So I'm going to work on me. I'm going to try to be a good human and do the right next thing. And again, this is all new to me, so I'm just starting it. But this kind of, this is kind of opening. It's like the focus on the binoculars. It's kind of fine-tuning for me, and this conversation helps. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks. Marla?
It seems like society as a whole puts heavy burdens on us as human beings, no matter who. Every culture has these restraints that they put on their children, and our friends we just come with this. But what made us addicts was that we couldn't fill that empty space that was created by not being able to fulfill other people's ideas of who we should be. That, for me, I'm going to say that's for me. In my experience, I could not quite fulfill that emptiness. And as a result, I just kept going with, like, my last addiction was pot, and I just kept eating and smoking, even though it wasn't making any difference. I wasn't getting any higher. And same with drinking. I just kept going and going and going. And I have a little body, and I'd barf and then start all over again. It was never enough. That's what that's what we have to deal with in recovery, is fulfilling that whole, satiating ourselves without getting high, I guess.
Well, find something within to feel rather than external, like we're looking and thinking it is. Yeah.
And the ultimate freedom for me, came with not giving a shit what other people think of me anymore. There's so much freedom in that.
No longer their prisoner, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to choose who you want to take up real estate in your brain, or what you want to have take up real estate in your brain.
Cindy?
I don't know if this will make any sense. I still sort it out in my head. There was something I saw at the end of last year that, like, whenever you're starting something, you have to be honest with yourself about where you are. And I think part of my issue for the last couple of years, certainly from a weight and health perspective, has been being delusional about where I'm at. Like, I just have not accepted where I'm at to start from there. So I just keep going, well, I just have to lose like 10 pounds and then I'd be good. And that's bullshit, because 10 pounds was a long time ago. So, and I'm not saying that I have to lose weight to be like to fit someone else's ideal or whatever. It has reached a point in my life in the last year where it's affecting my health, and I'm a nurse. So I spend my professional life telling other people and counseling them and coaching them on how to take care of themselves, and I'm not taking care of me. And so now I've reached a point physically where it's like, it's not even optional anymore. Like, somebody should be counseling me, which is me. I should be counseling me because I know what to do. So I feel like I reached a point where, like, I had started to lose some weight. I had felt good about my health. I became a Whole30 certified coach, was doing all this stuff. And then I got scared. And then I dealt with some emotional stuff and I ate. Because if I keep the weight on, then I can't be a good Whole30 certified coach, and I can't be this and I can't be that. So I can set myself up for failure just by eating. And at the end of this last year, I literally found myself eating food and not even enjoying it and not wanting it and still sitting there and eating it. And that's when I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. This is just like drinking, right? I'm just going to keep drinking, except now it's an Oreo. Excuse all my swearing this morning. But I just, like, it has occurred to me that I am doing the same thing, or I have been doing the same thing with food and exercise that I did with so many other things. It's like, let me create some distance between me and everyone else. This time I'm going to do it with food and some weight. Because then I don't want to be intimate with my husband because I feel like shit. So there, I've got some space now. I'm good.
Yeah, your ego always wants to divide, doesn't it? It always wants to be divisive. Find a way to make you separate. Yeah.
It does. I mean, my place of comfort is withdrawal. And so last year I started to physically create a situation where I have to withdraw because, which is crazy. I don't mean crazy, like crazy. It's like at what point will I stop going into the same hole with a different substance?
When you surrender to fear. You hit the nail on the head with the fear, Cindy.
Yeah.
That fear of success with this, that getting rid of the fears that are associated with that. All this is just protecting that fear is all it is. That's what I think. That's where things go for me, is to fear. Fear. Kirsty?
I think that's when I sleep. When I'm doing something and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it might get a bit good. Oh, I'm just going to sleep and do fuck all.
Yes. This seems to be going well. What can I do to fuck it up?
Well, that's what our fear, the only tool our ego has is fear. That's it. Just think about how many things we thought we were motivated out of good things in ourselves when it was really just fear. We're afraid of failing. We're afraid of not having enough money. We're afraid of getting kicked out of our house. We're afraid our spouse isn't going to appreciate us. We're afraid of this and that. We're afraid our kids are going to make mistakes. And we make all these decisions based off of fear, and that's all our ego has. It doesn't have, when we can surrender that and quit being the prisoner of all of this and move to a place of love, to where now we do things out of love. We want to have a nice house, not because we want to work, not because we're afraid of losing what we have, but because we want to provide good things for the people we love. How much better is that? It might look the same on the outside, but it's totally different within, Paul, you got something, sir? Oh, go ahead, Kirsty.
I think there's also a fear of and well, for me anyway, of being loved. Because if you're loved and it goes against everything you've ever believed, and you're liked and you're appreciated, and people you and for, dare I say it, you fit in, pause, right? You know, that's scary, because then people can take that away, and that's like, no, don't want that. I'd rather fuck you off right from the start, because then I don't have to deal with the potential in my head that will play of rejection. So
yeah, thanks, Cindy. Paul, you have something, sir?
Yeah, just getting back a little bit to what Marla was touching on with society, and I mean, we live in a materialistic society, and, we're always trying to keep up appearances. I know that was a big thing with my parents' generation, especially when I was a kid. A lot of this, I think, can be traced back to our childhoods, can it? I mean, my parents, my dad was very successful, and he wanted all of his sons to be successful. And he really was kind of, when I was in high school, he was kind of pushing me towards a career in accounting, because he thought, accountants make good money, and, this and that and the other thing. And I wanted to go into radio, which, if anybody knows anything about the radio business, when you're starting especially, you make no money. I mean, you literally make little to no money, which is what happened to me. And then I found my current job, which thankfully is a little more money. It's still not anything near what an accountant would make, but I'm happy. And, that's what drives me. So, but yeah, I think it all goes back to our, even my parents, I'm sure they had some different expectations for me in a lot of things. I'm sure they wanted me to get married and have kids, and I decided that wasn't for me either. So, and I had a lot of self-loathing about that kind of stuff for a long time. I think that really drove my addiction. One of the great benefits of my recovery has been that, I learned to get rid of that, and just like who I am for who I am. So,
thanks, Paul. Thanks. Craig?
I think sometimes the biggest fear comes from change, letting go of what's comfortable, letting go of what we're used to, even if it's hurting us. At the moment, I'm potentially facing a change where I'm going to have to do something new, and it doesn't sit right with me. There's just something that's not quite right about me having to get out of my comfort zone and go and do something that it's not something I'm being forced to do. It's something that I need to do. But I'm finding at the moment I'm fairly settled in the routine that I'm at, and I'm questioning: do I want to stay this comfortable, or is this another change that's going to be good for me? I've always feared change as something bad, because it gets me out of my everyday routine. But thankfully, one of the biggest changes I ever made was the best thing I ever done, and that was not drinking. And when I was drinking, I tried everything to not drink apart from not drinking. That was my biggest fear, was letting go of drinking. By the answer was I had to stop drinking, but I didn't want to do it.
Thanks, Craig. How about let's talk in the last few minutes we have about this idea of doing our work, then stepping back, that being the path to serenity. I think this chapter has set us up to this. At first it told us, showed us what was wrong, and then showed us what was wrong outwardly, then internally told us about being a people pleaser. Now it's given us the real tool to use to improve on this. Learning how to do our work and step back is the only path to serenity. Stephen Mitchell on that, he says, when you do your work wholeheartedly, you're glad to let it go, just as a parent lets a child go into its own life. So he's saying that it's talking about approaching our work in the same way that when our children get older, that we start relating to them, in that we let them find their way. You know, they can walk themselves somewhere instead of you having to take them when they get big enough. That kind of letting go of your children in the same way that we can let go of our work, that we don't have to be trapped by our work in a way that we please people, you know, that kind of a thing. Tina?
To me, I feel like this is about letting your ego go, because, you know, well, I guess what sums it up best for me is somebody in my meeting, you know, we try not to put limits on how long you can speak. You know, there's a couple theories on that. But the one that hits home with me the most is they say, try to limit your speaking to about 3 minutes, because anything after that is bullshit anyways. And I've always found it so true, because once you say what you're thinking, there it is. After that, you're trying to prove or convince, or whether it's yourself, someone else, and that's your ego. They said anything after that's ego. And to me, that's what sums this up, is that here you are, and that's all you need to do. It only is going to be a few minutes of what you got.
Thank you, Tina. You know, anytime in my work, I can approach my work in the same way that work could be anything that we're doing, not just our work, so to speak, is what we're doing to make a living. But any of our actions can be the same way. Whatever it is that we're accomplishing, are we looking at it as a way that, what's our goal behind that? What's our purpose? Or am I doing this task because I'm afraid someone's not going to be happy with me? Then I'm over into this people-pleasing business. Or am I doing this for someone because I love them and I want to do something nice for them? And I've found myself over the years, the majority of my tasks were rooted in some kind of fear, like we were talking about earlier. Now they're starting to move toward love, but I still see them. Cindy and I were talking for the meeting about a situation that happened to me this morning, where I was pushing someone out of fear. Had no love in it at all. It was all fear. You're going to be late for your job and they're not going to be happy with you. There's no love in that. That's fear. So I was push. So I got pushed back because all it was fear, you know. So, you know, that's the kind of thing that we learn. And it's just great when we start learning these, what's really behind what we're doing, you know, and when we can be honest with that, we can start moving to a higher level with it. Any comments at this point? Tina, you have something else? Or are you good? You good? Okay. All right. Wayne Dyer. We've got about 10 minutes or so. Marlowe, you want to hit some of Wayne Dyer?
Sure. Let me just read the verse. This is Wayne Dyer's version. To keep on filling is not as good as stopping. Overfilled, the cupped hands drip. Better to stop pouring. Sharpen a blade too much, and its edge will soon be lost. Fill your house with jade and gold, and it brings insecurity. Puff yourself with honor and pride, and no one can save you from a fall. Retire when the work is done. This is the way of heaven. So the chapter is called Live with Humility. The Tao has a capability to generate everything in amounts that would stupefy an observer. Yet its gentle humility seems to know when there are enough trees, flowers, bees, hippos, and every other living thing. Excess is eschewed by the Tao. It doesn't need to show off its unlimited capacity for creating. It knows exactly when to stop. Blah, blah, blah. Cramming life with possessions, pleasures, pride, and activities when we've obviously reached a point where more is less indicates being in harmony with ego, not the Tao. Living humility knows when to just stop, let go, and enjoy the fruits of our labor. This verse clearly analogizes that the pursuit of more status, more money, more power, more approval, more stuff is as foolish as honing a carving knife after it has reached its zenith of sharpness. Obviously, to continue would just create dullness, and it is obvious that a keen edge represents perfection. So Lao Tzu advises us to be careful about amassing great wealth and storing it away. This practice contributes to a life spent keeping our fortunes safe and insured, while at the same time always feeling the need to pursue more. He counsels us to be satisfied at a level that fosters living with humility. If wealth and fame are desired, we must know when to retire from the treadmill and be like the Tao. This is the way of heaven as opposed to the world that we live in, which is addicted to, in italics, more. Wayne Dyer sees this as a choice overload. We have too many pain pills for backaches, for menstrual cramps, headaches, and joint pains. And how do you make a decision? We just have too many. I believe that Lao Tzu sends the following modern advice from his ancient perspective. Come to grips with the radical concept of enough is enough. And he goes on, make this commitment even though you live in a world addicted to the idea that one can never have enough of anything. To paraphrase Lao Tzu, do your work and then step back. Practice humility rather than ostentation and uncontrolled consumption. The obesity crisis in the Western world, particularly in America, is a direct result of not understanding and living the simple wisdom of the 9th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Eat, but stop when you're full. To continue stuffing food into a satiated body is to be trapped in believing that more of something is the cause of your happiness, as well as drinking too much. And this is true of overfilling yourself with any artificial symbol of success. Think instead of the infinite wisdom of the Tao, which says, to keep on filling is not as good as stopping. Enough is not only enough, it is in alignment with the perfection of the eternal Tao. Seek the joy in your activities rather than focusing on ego's agenda. And it goes on to say, about the ego. The next time you're mired in a desire for more, stop and think of the Tao. This creation principle fully grasps the idea that when the work is done, then for God's sakes, it's time to stop. As Lao Tzu advises, this is the way of heaven. Why ever choose to be in conflict with that? And in practice, do the Tao now. At your next meal, practice portion control by asking yourself after several bites if you're still famished. If not, just stop and wait. If no hunger appears, call it complete. At this one meal, you'll have practiced the last sentence of the 9th verse of the Tao Te Ching. Retire when the eating is done. This is the way of heaven.
Thank you, Marlowe. There was one thing in here that I really liked. He was talking about how we don't always have to improve things. We don't always have to make things better. This idea here that if 9 months will create such a beautiful baby, I'll extend the gestation period to 5 years.
It will be perfect.
Now we'll have an even more perfect creation. Nope. The Tao says that 9 months is perfect. That's what you get, and you don't need any more time. This idea that we can always improve and make something better and that whole thing. That was really interesting to me that he used that example, which really is a great example of that. In the couple of minutes we have left, I do want to talk about a little more about how we approach this idea with work or tasks in such a way that we can move from people-pleasing to maybe something a little healthier than that. Any suggestions on tools to use for me about how to step back from your work, in other words? Practically how to do that. A couple of things has been mentioned already, and Paul talked about this, and several of us did. about doing our daily practice, whatever that practice is, to make us more aware of what's going on for the day. That's a good place to start. Because if we're not awake and alert, we're not able to see these things anyway. We talked about, is my motivation for what I'm doing out of fear or out of love? Am I doing this because I'm afraid? Or am I doing this or can I move that motivation, surrender the fear, and find love in what I'm doing? Paul, you have something, sir?
Yeah, just one quick little tool that always works for me, and this is when I'm at work and I get stuck on something that I can't figure out and it's driving me crazy. I get out and I go for a walk, and that works every single time. I come back and I look at it from a fresh perspective, and it's never let me down once.
Wow, so you made some emptiness. You made some room there for the solution to show itself. Yeah.
Yep.
That's
For
good.
me, about dealing with like not being a doormat or caring what other people think about me, I realize that they have the same insecurities that I do. People are just like me. I'm just like them. We all have the same insecurities. So who am I trying to impress? They're trying to impress me. I'm trying to impress them. Who wins? Nobody. In realizing through recovery and talking to other people, I think the same way, and I'm not defective. It's got me to a point where although I care what other people think of me, I don't. It doesn't define who I am anymore.
It's a practice, isn't it, Marlowe?
Definitely a practice. I started with family. I really did. Is that my family is the one that I wanted to really impress and have them approve of me, and I started with them, not working so hard at it anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Cindy?
I think it's two things for me. One is my sponsor always said, do the work and let your higher power take care of the outcome. And I have a quote that I keep on my desk that's marry the process, divorce the outcome, because I can't control how it comes out. And the other thing is I have learned to embrace the fact, or I'm learning, I'm quirky. Like, I am an odd duck, and that's okay. So for me to go to work and try to act like I'm this ultra, uber, super, have my shit together nurse, it doesn't work. I have to embrace it. So like yesterday I was at work and my patient's IV pump started beeping, and she's like, did I do something wrong? And I'm like, no, your nurse forgot to undo the clamp. That's why. So let me undo that and we'll be good to go. And I have just found by just being who I am when I'm with patients and being authentic works out so much better than when I try to be what my head thinks a good nurse is, like in terms of personality, because that's not who I am. Like, I'm a little off, and I think that makes me special. I said to a patient yesterday who is also an alcoholic, who's got some other mental health issues, and she's like, my husband gives me shit, blah, blah, whatever. I said, listen, there are some of us who have so much fabulousness going on that it takes a village, and that's okay. and that's how I'm approaching it now is, you know what? It's not because I'm defective. It's because I'm not fucking special. It just takes more people.
That's what I was meaning to say. I'm not special, but I'm special.
Yes, but it's okay.
I have to approach this idea of people pleasing in the same way that I did my alcohol, in that I'm powerless over this, and I need help with this area of life, like every other area of life that I want to be free of me, free of fear. I have to surrender it. So that makes it a process. A process of surrender, really, when I can approach it without my solution. My solution is to jump in when I'm afraid of something and try to fix it and push and force. It's always this push, and my voice goes up, and the whole thing of, you're not doing what you need to, and I'm afraid this is not going to happen, so here. And I push and I force. But I've got to learn just to step back from that. So that's good. The letting go. Gratitude is where I thought you were going, Paul, because I was going to mention gratitude as a tool when I'm with my work. If I can't find If I can't find a way to move from fear to love, that bridge can be the gratitude.
Yeah.
I thought I'd let somebody else mention it once.
Okay.
Maybe if you keep repeating it, it'll finally sink in.
Yeah, Paul.
Anyway,
Yeah, no, but
happy birthday, Paul.
Oh, yeah, happy birthday, Paul. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Marla. Hope you have a great birthday today, Paul. I hope it's filled with emptiness.
It's off to a good start.
Guys,
I got you a birthday gift. Nothing. Happy birthday.
guys, anything else before we close? Everyone good?
Good meeting.
All right, guys, don't you have a great week. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. For more information about the SRC, go to theshairpodcast.com. Shair is spelled SHAIR, and look for the Shair Recovery Community link. When you join the SRC, you will be able to participate in this meeting and many more live, plus access to a video library of past meetings and many more benefits for being a part of this growing community. Thanks again for listening, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share this podcast with your friends in recovery.